Hello, all you headbangers out there. It's that time once again. My name is Alan. Let's talk metal. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story. And it's a story about the one that got away, time and time again. I had pulled this record out for a different video I was making recently, and I hadn't taken it out in a very long time. I hadn't looked at it or played about it. And, as I was thinking about what to do with it in the other video, a lot of memories just started rushing back about what a pain in the butt this album had been for me to track down. And I'm like, it might make a fun little story to tell on camera. So this is kind of a, hunting and collecting story. If you like this format, let me know, and I can certainly tell more of these. I've been at this for, 30 some years now. There are some cool stories of finding neat records in the wild, and there are some less cool stories of records that haunt you for ages before you can finally reel it in. And the one I'm going to be talking about tonight is this little fellow. It's known as the Warlord EP by Hollow Ground, also known as the Flying High EP. It's a new wave of British heavy metal record. Gee, I bet you thought I'd never talk about one of those. And yeah, my story and my relationship with this record goes back to the very beginning of my interest in new wave of British heavy metal. So in kind of like, late 91 or so, Metal Blade Records, working with Lars Ulrich, put out a compilation album celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the new wave of British heavy metal. It was supposed to have come out in 1989, but got delayed because Lars was busy doing something, who knows what, washing the car, walking the dog, touring the world, stuff any guy would do. But anyway, it eventually came out as, new wave of British heavy metal 79 revisited. I've shown this off and talked about it in other videos. When I first got this was a cassette copy, replaced it with a CD set later on. It's one of those 2 CD sets in a really thick double case. And this was my introduction to new wave of British heavy metal. I'd read about it in Goldmine magazine. They'd done a little interview thing with Lars talking about it, and it just seemed really interesting, the kind of thing I wanted to check out. And I did. And yeah, maybe that was a mistake looking back. Been a lot of hours and a lot of money spent since then on this stuff, but really love it. One of the bands I loved on here the most was this one. On here, it's spelled Hallow Ground, but that's incorrect. It was Hollow Ground. And they had this song, Fight with the Devil. And it was instantly one of my favorite tracks on here. Really good, high energy song, pounding beat. Loved the chorus. Guy could really belt it out. Amazing track. And so, as I was cobbling together sort of my first want list, which was, mostly stuff by bands I'd heard on this compilation, Hollow Ground was one of them, because the liner notes, even on the cassette tape, were pretty thorough, and mentioned, where some of the songs had come from and such. And knew then that, this Hollow Ground song had come from a compilation album called Rock Snacks, which had a funny title to it. And, with some digging, I found out that the band had also released an EP. So yeah, those things were high on my want list. They both came out in 1980. Hollow Ground did not last very long. They were there sort of, at the initial explosion of new wave of British heavy metal stuff, but then disappeared pretty quick too. Their stuff has gotten the anthology treatment in more recent years, so you can definitely check out their stuff for a pretty reasonable price. But yeah, the Rock Snacks compilation is this one. It's one of 2 notable compilations put out by the Guardian Records label. Guardian did a lot of early new wave of British heavy metal. The Mithra EP was on Guardian. Satan's first single was on Guardian. The Incubus to the Devil a Daughter LP was on that one. So a lot of good stuff there. And yeah, the Rock Snacks was one of their 2 compilations. The other is Roxcalibur, but this is the one that had Hollow Ground on it. So I had to track this down, and I did, and it's got cool stuff on it. It's an odd compilation in that there's only 3 bands featured, and each one got like, a whopping 4 tracks or so included. So this was great. It wasn't just one Hollow Ground song, it was a bunch of them. This compilation, there's another band called Samurai, which is not the same new wave of British heavy metal Samurai that later recorded a couple albums on Ebony, like Sacred Blade and Weapon Master. Totally different band. But yeah, you've also got a band called Saracen. Not the same Saracen that would also record Heroes, Saints, and Fools and other material later on. Completely different Saracen in the new wave of British heavy metal. These guys really should have hopped on the internet and figured out some more unique names, seen what was on Metal Archives to make sure they didn't keep picking the same band names over and over. Oh yeah, right. It's 1980. You didn't hop on much of anything regarding a computer in 1980. But yeah, so you had these three bands. The other two are pretty good. A lot of the songs are quite fine. But yeah, the Hollow Ground stuff is the standout material. They've got a song called "The Holy One" on here. They've got "Flying High," which is a nice, catchy one, good soaring chorus to it. They've got "Rock On," which is now I'm not nuts about that song. I think it's a little bland, but it's also got the amazing "Fight with the Devil," and love it to death for that. So yeah, tracked down the compilation album after a couple of years and was quite happy with it, but still wanted that EP. Yeah, still wanted that EP. So I was always looking for it. But again, this is the early and mid 90s. Not a lot going on in terms of new wave of British heavy metal vinyl floating around in Middle America at that point. I was, living in Northwest Ohio. Wasn't much of a metal scene there. There weren't record shows to go to very often. People I talked to knew nothing about new wave of British heavy metal, much less one of the really obscure bands that had only put out a 7-inch EP at the time. After a year or two, I started getting catalogs from metal vinyl dealers. What they would do back then was advertise in the back of magazines like Goldmine, where you could, send them a self-addressed stamped envelope or whatever, and they'd send you like little printed out sheets, of a sale list. And usually it was just set sale. Here's what I've got. Here's the price. First one who calls me and wants it, they get it. And so I started getting those from different collectors, from different dealers. And this allowed me to start picking up a couple of items here, a couple of items there. Yeah, again, this was when I was in college. I'm washing a heck of a lot of dishes to, pay bills and, take the girlfriend out every now and then and stuff. So budget's pretty limited, but I was able to pick up some records here and there along the way. And so I was always on the lookout for that Hollow Ground. And then in March of 1996, one of these catalogs arrived in my mailbox at the dorm. And I actually still have the catalog. It's from an old vinyl dealer. John Allenson was a British fellow who had moved to this side of the pond and settled down up in the mountains right next to the West Virginia state line. And yeah, sold heavy metal vinyl. He actually ran a record exchange store there in West Virginia in Bluefield for a few years. But this is before all that. He was selling stuff out of these little catalogs. He printed up about maybe 4 times a year, like once a season. And, just very straightforward, name, title, price. Nothing fancy. Throw a few pictures in here and there, just, rough photocopies of stuff. So I got this on a Friday morning in March of 1996. Yes, I know exactly which day of the week it was and what month it was. And open it the first page, and blam, right here, Hollow Ground, Flying High. It even has this little blurb next to it that, and I quote, one of the greatest new wave of British heavy metal bands, UK, 1980, $75. And he had this little star system thing, to indicate if it had picture sleeves and stuff like that. This copy was missing the picture sleeve, but $75 was a heck of a lot for me to consider paying for a record. I think I'd only paid that much for one item in my life up to this point. But this was shut up and take my money time. There was only one little problem. I said I got this on Friday afternoon. It was the Friday afternoon heading into spring break. And so, or I guess the Friday morning heading into spring break. And so my girlfriend at the time and I were throwing everything into her car and driving about 9 hours to go spend at least the first part of spring break with my parents. So, hundreds of miles away. And the way the timing worked on this, I literally pulled this out of the mailbox as we're loading the stuff into the car. They'd just gotten the mail posted. Figured I'd grab it when it was there. Oh, great, the catalog's there. So I'm literally looking at this thing as we're driving down the interstate, and I see blam. There it is. Holy moly. Been looking for this record for years. I get all excited. My girlfriend, wonders what the heck I'm freaking out about. Then she sees the color. It's like, oh, it's a record, isn't it? It's like, maybe. And, I think about it for a few minutes, and I forgot to like, okay, I've got just a little bit of wiggle room money here. If I don't spend a whole lot of stuff on myself during spring break, I'm still going to buy the essentials. I'm still want to get stuff for her. I'm not going to, chintz out on that stuff. But I want to use the money I've saved up for spring break fun, and I want to buy that record. The only problem is I got to wait until we get to my parents' house to call the guy to tell him I want the record. Because again, this is 1996. I don't have a cell phone because nobody has a cell phone. I'm not going to stop in the middle of the interstate and start, trying to use a payphone to call a guy in the middle of the afternoon and ask about a record. But yeah, we get to my parents' house that evening, pack, say highs, get everything in the house, put it down. So it's like, I'll be right back, folks. I gotta go make a phone call. And they're like, what's that about? She's like, it's about a record. My folks are like, oh, Lord, bless his heart. So yeah, call the guy up. Just like, John, got your catalog today. Hollow Ground. He's like, it's already gone. Son of a biscuit. Is not what I said. I said several other things. And the time it had taken us to drive from Ohio to my parents' house, somebody else had called and bought the record. Okay, then. Wasn't meant to be. So I still had money to do other things on spring break. I don't know what the heck we did. I think I actually may have used it. I'm trying to remember. That may have been the spring break. We ended up in Niagara Falls later in the week, and I used it to buy an obituary t-shirt from, once dead kind of era. Maybe. No, it's Cause of Death era. Anyway, I'm off track. So, Hollow Ground stays on the want list. And keep looking for it. Eventually relocate to Texas. Still picking up, metal vinyl when I get the chance to. Getting in contact with a few more, dealers and collectors and stuff. And we get to the fall of 1997. And one of the bigger metal vinyl collectors at the time, a guy named Paul Rote, lived in Pennsylvania, was selling off his collection. He was sort of retiring, wanted to literally buy or build a log cabin out in the woods, get away from it all kind of thing. So he was selling off his record collection to help finance all this. And I got his list. It was literally sort of, going out of business, liquidating everything sale list. And I don't still have Paul's list laying around, but had a lot of good new wave of British heavy metal stuff on it, including the Hollow Ground EP. And so I was like, oh. Okay, let's sit down, look through this list real fast, figure out what things I gotta have. And he had some really good stuff that was high on my want list on it. And let's call the guy as fast as I can, talk this through. And so I did. Really nice guy. Paul was very nice, very polite. And I mentioned several records I wanted. He had stuff like the Wicked Vicar 7-inch, a second pressing of Diamond Head Lightning to the Nations, still on the white label, but with the printed happy face labels, not the plain white labels. I think he had the Damascus 12-inch EP, may have been one of them. Several really cool things. And each one is just like, yep, still got it, it's yours. Yep, still got it, it's yours. Yep, still got it, it's yours. I'm like, and the Hollow Ground EP? Yep, still got it, it's yours. Oh, yes. Loved it. So I hang up the phone, happy as a lark. Going to have to send this man a decent chunk of money, but I was making a little more money while living in Texas working as a TA. Not a ton, but my living expenses were really low. So had enough money. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to splurge. These are some big items. These things have been on my want list now about 5 years. I've spent about 5 years at this point trying to find this Hologround EP and some of these others. Time to get them. All is right with the world. Until 7:30 that evening, when my phone rings, and it's Paul. There's not a good reason Paul wrote would be calling me back several hours afterwards, unless there's a problem. Alan, I've got some bad news. Like, oh, please don't be the hollow ground. Oh, please don't be the hollow ground. Oh, please don't. About that hollow ground you wanted. I'm so sorry. I had completely forgotten. Someone called a little earlier in the afternoon and had that on their list. And it hadn't really sunk in when you called and asked about it too. I hadn't really even had time to cross it off the list. So I'm really sorry, but I don't have it. What can I do to make this up to you? And just devastated, but I had to think fast. I'm just like, I could cuss and scream. That's not going to do anything. I could just say, well, cancel the whole, bloody order. I don't want anything to do with it. But there's a lot of other good stuff here I want. And, he's a nice guy. It's a dumb mistake, but it's going to happen. So I think quickly. There was other stuff on the list I'd wanted, but just couldn't afford. So I was like, well, that's really disappointing. So that was one of the things I wanted the most. How about though we replace it with a couple of other things? I picked a couple of things that had priced out higher than the hologram, which again I think was right at $75, the same price it had been when John had it a year or so earlier. And I was like, well, those were a little more pricey than the hologram. I think I picked two things that came out to like $100 instead of 75. I was just like, well, maybe we'll just cancel the whole thing then. That's a real bummer. He's like, no, we're really trying to move this stuff fast. So yeah, okay, it's close enough. It was my fault. It was a dumb mistake. So yeah, I'll give you the extra record. So I ended up getting the Blitzkrieg 7-inch and some other record, which escapes me right now. But it ended up being really good value. Still got some great stuff. A lot of cool singles in there. The Wicked Vicar has always been a personal favorite. The Diamond Head I had looked for years, and this was the first time I'd gotten a vinyl copy of it. So yeah, it was a great purchase. Got a bunch of stuff off my want list, but I didn't get the hologram off my want list. And on my want list, it stayed. And stayed. And stayed. Didn't turn up. You get into the late 90s, you get into eBay. It was something I was always checking eBay for. Didn't turn up. And also, getting into this time frame, there was sort of a little spike in interest on some of the heavy metal vinyl. Some of the stuff was getting released on some bootleg CDs, like the Japanese New Wave of British Heavy Metal volumes 1 through 8 series, and that was pushing up the prices on a lot of these things. And all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, when a copy did get listed somewhere, Hologram had gone from being like a $7,500 kind of record to about a $325 record. And it's just like, oh, son of a biscuit. Although that's not what I said. Completely out of my price range. And stay on my want list it did, because it wouldn't go away. And then we jump forward to, let me think. I just relocated to Columbia, South Carolina, so it would have been winter of 2004. Getting settled into Columbia, working on stuff. Had gone back to school at this point. So again, money was I'd saved up some money working the year before, but it's still a lot of new expenses back in school. And a copy turned up on eBay. Really nice copy with a picture sleeve. I'm just like, oh, this is not a good time. Why couldn't this have shown up like 6 months ago when I would have felt a lot better about maybe spending a little extra money to try to get something like this? And this was one, by this point, I've been looking for the record for almost a decade. And it had literally become this sort of almost just running joke, piece of family lore. Again, I've mentioned numerous times that my dad's a record collector for oldies stuff. And so, this was something he could relate to a little bit. While he had no interest in heavy metal, he could still understand the frustration of tracking down records for years and years. And so it was always so did you get the hologround yet? No. Well, why not? Because it's hard to find and very expensive. Why haven't you got that thing off your want list yet? Oh, shut up. Don't talk about that. So, it was kind of a running joke with us. So, yeah, next time I talked to him, of course, he brought up hologram. Just like, well, there's actually a copy of it on eBay right now, but I don't think I can really go after it right now. It's, not a great time to be spending a lot on trying to get a record like that. He's like, holy crap, there's one on eBay. He's like, send me the link. I want to look at it. I was like, yeah, sure. Sent him the link, checked it out. Yeah, I watched it all week, and yeah, it got up to a couple $100. I was just like, this is not happening. This is not going to happen. Watched it, go along, watched it go along. I literally sat there, watched their auction wrap up, and it ended up with something like $455. Just, it was like, oh man, that's steep. Didn't surprise me too much. It wasn't an outrageous price for the record at the time, but yeah, that's pretty much every penny you'd want to have paid for it. Get a phone call that night from Dad. He's like, so how'd the hologram wrap up? He's like, went for $455. He's just like, yeah, I saw that. He's like, you didn't bid on it, did you? He's just like, no, I didn't bid on it. He's like, did you look at who did bid on it? He's like, no. It's like, you ought to look at who bid on it. I looked, and bless his heart, my dad had put in a bid of $450 on that record and came in second. He's like, I'm real sorry. I was trying to buy it for you. I was going to save it for like a Christmas or birthday present or something. And I got outbid with like 2 seconds left on the clock by $5 effing. And to this day, I love him to death for trying, because hell, that's breezed out. How many folks are going to try to buy, their wayward son, a record for that kind of crazy money? I thanked him profusely, and I do to this day. But once again, it wasn't meant to be. So it stayed on my want list. And stayed on my want list. And stayed on my want list. Now, I've already shown a copy, so spoiler alert, I did finally get it. So where did this copy come from? Well, this turned up around 2012, 2013. Let's call it 2013 plus or minus a year. I don't have the exact date nailed down on this one. It wasn't long after my wife and I had just bought a house. And so again, we're going from 2004, jumping forward another 8 years. The damn record has been on my want list 20 years at this point. And I get email from a collector buddy over in Sweden who have done other trades with. We've hooked each other up with a lot of good stuff over the years. And he had some stuff he was looking to get rid of. Wasn't looking to trade. I think he was just looking to sell some stuff for cash. And, he knew that, if his prices were reasonable, I, would consider it. And this was one of the things he had. And I was just like, well, how much is that? And this was a point where some of these new wave of British heavy metal singles that had been known for quite a while had kind of lagged a little bit in price. They weren't selling for as much as they had been a decade earlier when interest was really, really high. And some of these things had backed off there in the early the early 2010s a little bit. Folks were spending a lot of money on some metal vinyl, but on other things. And so the hologram was one I had noticed that, the price had kind of crept down a little bit on the odd occasion that, a copy would turn up on eBay maybe once every 8 to 12 months. But, it was always still pretty expensive, or it was missing the picture sleeve, or it was, in, Eastern Liberia, where the shipping cost was going to be, 143,000, quadrillia, and you couldn't even find a conversion factor for it, whatever. Couldn't get it. But, Patrick I dealt with several times before, nice guy. I knew if he said it was in good condition and all that I'd had nothing to worry about. And so, bought a few things from him, but ended up, this became part of sort of a package deal. that, he quoted a price. I thought it was pretty reasonable. We worked it out with some other records. And at long last, the record came home to roost. And I swear to God, next time I had talked to my dad, same question came up. So, did you ever find that hollow ground record? It's like, yes, I did. And he just lost it. He's like, no way. He's like, you've got to show it to me next time I come and visit. That's too cool that you finally got it. And so I did exactly that. And so that is how it took me 20 years to get a copy of the Hollow Ground EP. Now, of course, I had heard the record long before I finally got a copy. Tape trading with friends and stuff. I had heard all the songs on it long ago. One thing I was also a little disappointed in, 2 of the tracks on here duplicate with tracks from the Rock Snacks album. So if you have both of these, basically there's 6 songs worth of material instead of 8 songs, because you still have Rock On is on here again, which I don't like that song. But you have a new one, Don't Chase the Dragon. Gee, I wonder what that's about. Must have been a lot of dragons running around in Great Britain in the early 80s, because lots of bands kept singing Don't Chase about them. But then you also have Flying High, got recycled here, and a new song that's a really good one called Warlord, which is, again, what sort of the EP has always unofficially been called. So, yeah. How to spend 20 years of your life looking for a record and drive your family crazy at the same time. Hollow Ground, be thy name. All right, that is the end of the story. So, as I said at the beginning, if you kind of like this format of just hearing sad tales of me spending too much time and, yeah, sometimes too much money trying to track down crazy things on my want list, let me know in the comments down below. I'd be happy telling some more of these kind of stories in future videos. But hey, maybe this is the kind of thing that nobody's interested in hearing me go on about. Let me know that in the comments too, and I'll spare you the gory details of other hunting and collecting stories that have gone on over time. So with that, let's call this one to a close. Everyone take care, and as always, keep banging your head to hollow ground. Just don't try to find the record. Or if you do, I hope you have better luck than I did. Take care.